welcome to episode 45 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria, your host, and you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as mmonska. The show notes for this week's episode and previous episodes can be found at stitchedinsweden.blogspot.com, and we have a Ravelry group where you can join in the chatter or ask any questions that you might have about the podcast. This week I'm going to talk a little bit about this week in Stockholm, including a couple of acquisitions. I have a few works in progress and one finished object, which I am realizing now is actually not quite finished, but I didn't bring it with me anyway, so. And then a couple of upcoming projects and dream knits. So starting out this week in Stockholm, today is a beautiful spring day. Right now it is 10 degrees Celsius, which is 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is the warmest day so far of the year. It's sunny and blue sky, and I spent almost the entire day inside doing advanced statistics. But that's how it is sometimes. I did have a nice walk home, and I am enjoying looking at the blue sky right now, so that's nice. Anyway, spring is here, and I've been able to switch to my lighter jacket and lighter shawls again instead of my huge scarf, and part of what I've been taking with me this week is my Alex Collins bag, which is this bag I showed you last week or the week before, I don't remember. You can see her logo there on the back, Alex Collins Designs, and I've been using this as my bag to carry everything to school in. It still has my school stuff in it right now, which is not very interesting, but I can fit my knitting project, my lunchbox, my notes, and I think it's just a really nice spring bag to take with you. So I can 100% recommend her, well, this product anyway. It's really well made, and like I said last week, or whenever I showed this before, I was a little bit nervous to bring it out into the wild because I didn't want it to get dirty, but it's so nice to carry everything with, and I really like it, so I'm glad I have broken out of that cleanness. I mean, it's not dirty, but you know, sometimes if you have a new pair of shoes or something and they're just too new until you use them a couple of times, and then you get used to using them. Anyway, I just thought I would mention that again, and you can find her on her website, which I think is Alex Collins Designs, but I will have a link in the show notes and include it on the screen for you. So this week I have been doing a lot of school, but I have also been doing a lot of knitting, and I sort of just decided, instead of just knitting socks in class, which is what I had been doing before, why not bring a whole sweater? So I'll show you that in works in progress, but basically this week has just included a lot of class, but also a bit of knitting in class, which has been nice. I did get a couple of things in the mail this week. The first thing that I got was some yarn, and you may have seen a picture of this on Instagram. I got 4 skeins of hedgehog fiber sock in the Implode colorway, or the Implode color. My dad always asks me why I call it colorway and not just color, and I don't know. But I think I will start calling it color, because maybe it's colorway because there's more than one color, like this is brown and gray. Anyway, I got 4 skeins of this hedgehog sock yarn in Implode, and this is 100 grams 350 meters, 90% superwash merino and 10% nylon. And I'm really excited about this color. Usually I wouldn't go for a yarn that has this much variegation in it because I tend to knit things in quite solid or just slightly tonal yarns, but I will show you the pattern that I'm thinking of for this, and I think it will make a really nice match. I've already caked up 3 of the skeins. Here are 2 of them caked up right now, and here's one that's uncaked so you can kind of see the difference. But basically it's a really nice silvery gray color with bits of a warm brown in there. The other reason that I wouldn't usually choose this yarn is because I don't like brown very much at all. I don't think I own any clothing that is brown. Yeah, it's just not a color that I gravitate to. My glasses are brown, but otherwise, that's it. Here are my glasses. But I think it could work as a nice color on me with my hair and general coloring. So yeah. 4 skeins of Implode, and I have already started knitting a swatch. So here is my swatch, and if you don't know which pattern this is for, I will show you. In one of my other acquisitions this week, I got my copy of Interpretations 3. This is a pattern booklet collection by Joji Locatelli and Vera Valimaki. And when this came out, I knew that I needed to get it in print. I really loved the Pom Pom magazines, how they are printed, and this is also produced by Pom Pom Press, I guess. And this is just a beautiful book full of really lovely patterns. I think that I could knit every single pattern in this book. And I probably won't, but I probably won't only because something else will grab my attention before I get to it, but I will probably knit a few of them anyway. So here is the Timeless Henley, and this is the sweater that I'm planning to use for the hedgehog sock. So you can see that I have knit a swatch. This pattern is knit from the top down. The top part of it is ribbing sort of stitch. I haven't looked totally into it. And then the body on the front and on the back has this this lace motif here, which I've swatched for. So this swatch has sort of all the stitches that I'll need for in this pattern. I started out with doing the lace part, and then I just did 1 row of purl bumps just to separate it from the stockinette section, and then another row of purl bumps, and then I did 1 by 1 ribbing, just to get a feeling for how each of the stitch patterns behaves. There's a note that this lace really changes in gauge when you block it, so it's particularly important to swatch for it. But I always swatch for sweaters, so I would have done it anyway, but it was good to particularly make note of the pre-washing and post-washing measurements of the swatch. So I knit this up maybe 2 nights ago. It's really soft. I'm pretty sure that I am on gauge for the stitch gauge, but I need to double check for the row gauge and just adjust my sweater if I'm off. for the row gauge because I really like the fabric that I'm getting right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to knit that Timeless Henley with the lace on the front and the back, which is how it is in the pattern. There are some pictures on Ravelry, but I could show you this one here, where you can see the back also has the lace on it. And there it is. So I'm really looking forward to knitting this. I think that I'll need to get the top part finished and at home, and then maybe I'll be able to knit the body in class. We will have to see. But it might just be a project that stays with me on my table here instead of bringing it to school. We'll just have to see how it goes. I'm sure you have seen many of the other projects in this book, but one of my other, it's hard even to show my favorites because I love so many of them. I really love the My Everything sweater, which reminds me of one of the first sweaters that I knit from Joji Locatelli, which is the Opposite Poles sweater, and I knit that for my mom. And I actually made it as a vest, and it's a circular sweater, and I just didn't knit the sleeves. Anyway, I think that the patterns in here are really beautiful, and I could definitely knit them all. So if only I had unlimited yarn supply. I also really like this one, which is called Breathing Space. And this book is really nice because it goes into some of the inspiration behind the patterns. And if you don't know, Interpretations 3 is a collaboration between Joji Locatelli and Vera Valimaki, where they come up with words, and then each of them, they come up with words together, or they decide on words, and then each of them sort of takes their interpretation of the word and designs a pattern from that. So they go into a little bit talking about what the word means to them and things like that as well in this book. See, look, even the shawl in the back, beautiful. So I think that will keep me busy for a little while, and even when I don't knit everything from a pattern book, because I hardly ever knit everything from a pattern book, I like having collections where I can see sort of like a cohesive, group of patterns that somehow inspire each other and come together and just create something really nice. And I think that, to me, sometimes looking through collections can help inspire me what I want to knit, even if I don't knit anything from the collection, but I will. Now I'm just rambling. I just got home from school, and maybe this wasn't the best time to record. Anyway, Interpretations 3, Hedgehog Fibers, it's going to be the Timeless Henley, and I also received some some Haya needles in the mail. I ordered these for the colorwork pullover, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then I ended up going to a different needle size for that. But these needles are what I used to swatch for the Timeless Henley, so it ended up being perfect. And I had never tried these needles before, so I thought I would talk about them a little bit. These are Haya bamboo needles, and I actually didn't even know that they made bamboo needles. I knew that Xiaogu had a bamboo interchangeable set, because I have had their metal interchangeable set before, and a friend of mine had the bamboo ones, so I had tried those ones, but I didn't know that Haya made them. And that was intriguing to me because I already have the Haya cables. so I only needed the tips. These are a US size 2.5, which is a 3mm needle. I found the points to be really nice and pointy, and they were really pleasant to knit with. They're very smooth. The numbers are slightly, I think they're engraved, which is nice because they won't rub off, but I can feel it slightly. I haven't noticed it while knitting, but if you think you might be sensitive to that, it's something to note. The cables work just as I thought they would with the other Haya sharps that I have, and so far I really like them. I'll see how it goes knitting the sweater with them, but I knit this whole swatch. Didn't seem to slow me down too much, and I really enjoyed it, so who knows? Maybe a set of these are in my future. I would really like to have some wooden or bamboo needles, because even though I really like knitting with metal, I think sometimes a slightly stickier needle has its place, and I'm considering, which is why I bought the carbons needles. So I do have the set of interchangeable carbons needles, which come in a case like this, and yeah, my set goes from 3mm up till 6mm, so you got the bigger needles there. And it's a really nice case for them, I think. For me, I like the carbons, but I'm considering selling my set because I haven't used them very much, and I think that the reason I haven't used them is because I find them to be quite heavy, and that sort of bothers me, especially compared to the Hayas, the Haya metal needles. The carbons are quite a bit heavier, and I find them to be a little bit trickier to maneuver. I do like knitting with my carbons smaller needles. I have some fixed circulars that are, I think I have maybe a 2mm, and some needles that I use for socks, and those seem to be okay because they're not, the needle themselves are very small, so they're not very heavy. But for the larger sizes, I think I might prefer a bamboo or a wooden needle. I was also able to try some of the Knit Pro Symphonies, which are the rainbow colored needles that look very similar to the Knit Picks interchangeable needles. And my friend has some of those ones, and so I was able to try hers this week. And I really like those also, so I'm considering, while I am in the US this summer for a little while, I might place an order with Knit Picks and get the interchangeable wooden set. I haven't fully decided yet, but I was never a really big fan of the rainbow ones, just with how they looked, but they have since come out with 2 new colors, I guess, of needles. The Caspians, which have sort of blues and greens, kind of like these colors. And then there's also, I think it's Majestic, which came out recently, which has more sort of purples like this, and maybe some blues and also greens. Anyway, those 2 options would be more my color choices anyway, so I will consider it for when I'm back in the summer. Anyway, that kind of went way off topic, but I just thought I would mention that these Haya bamboos are really nice to knit with. Okay, so for works in progress this week, I have 2 sweaters on the needles. The first one I showed you I don't even think I showed you my swatch last week because I forgot it. You probably know what this is. This big green blob is my Herbarium sweater. This pattern is by Nadia Cretin Le Chien. Lachine. It's French. I think she goes by NCL Knits on Ravelry. And it is a bottom-up lace front pullover, which I hadn't started on my previous podcast, but now I have almost a completed garment. So this is what I've been knitting in class this week and last week. And I've got a lot of progress done on it. The pattern really needs to be blocked. You can see even from me holding it up that the back looks longer than the front, but it actually is exactly the same length. It's just that the front part is not blocked and is scrunching up more than the plain stockinette stitch in the back. So this yarn that I'm using to knit with is the Pepaput yarn. I originally I bought 3 skeins of this yarn, and 2 of the skeins I noticed were more similar to each other than the 3rd skein, and I was a bit worried about that because, well, for obvious reasons, if you have one skein that's the oddball out, it can be difficult to knit a sweater. This is the 3rd ball, so I was able to knit the entire body of the sweater with the first 2 balls. I didn't alternate skeins in the body except for a couple of rows while I was transitioning from one skein to the other skein. So that happened about in the mid area of the body. You can't even tell where it is because there was really no color difference between 2 of the skeins. On the 3rd skein, however, it really was quite a bit more yellow. And I first thought if I just knit the sleeve with it, you won't be able to tell, or you'll be able to tell, but it will be fine because it will be the sleeve and it will be sort of a separate part, so it won't matter. Well, yesterday I knit about half of this sleeve, and you can even tell from there it is way more yellow than the body of the sweater. Right? Now I'm alternating with a little bit that I have left from the body, but I only have 20 grams from the body, so the whole sleeve won't be able to be alternated because I'm only going to use 10 grams for one sleeve and 10 grams for the other sleeve alternating, and the rest will have to be the bright yellow. And it's, quite a bit different. You can see that it's striped, so that is a little bit disappointing. The thing is, too, is that I don't think that it would have mattered if I had alternated skeins for the entire sweater. Because I bought 3 skeins, I don't know how I would have alternated with 3, unless I was working 3 at the same time. But still, there would have been 2 balls that were almost exactly the same, and then I would be getting a stripe of this bright yellow every couple of rows. So I just don't really know. It's kind of unfortunate, but I'm just gonna wait and see what it looks like when it's finished and hope for the best. Anyway, I really do like this pattern. I have just made some slight modifications. I don't even know if you can call them modifications, really. I decided to do an exposed seam on the top. So I used a 3-needle bind off instead of, I did the 3-needle bind off on the outside instead of having it hidden on the inside because I like that edge that it makes. And I think that's about it for modifications. So I will probably finish that up soon, and I'm excited to see what it looks like blocked and get to wear it. I think it will be a nice sweater for the spring, and I'm hoping that the sleeves aren't too crazy. It looks really bad. The other project that I have been working on this week is the Winter Storm Pullover, which is a pattern by Anne Meyer, and she is Piniguri on Ravelry. She is a Norwegian designer, and she is excellent at color work. She has a lot of beautiful color work patterns already published. Some of them are, I'm not going to show you quite yet. Some of them are only in Norwegian, but many of them do have an English translation, which is what I'm helping her with for this one. She's already done the English translation, but I am just knitting with the English translation to make sure that everything seems to make sense for someone who's knitting in English. So I got a bit done on this since having nothing done on it before. And so I will show you what I have. Here it is. You can see this is a top-down raglan pullover. And I started with this yellow color for the neckline, and then there are obviously increases on either side for the shoulders. This pattern does have short row shaping so that the back will be higher than the front, which is a really excellent feature of the pattern, I think. And then it goes into this nice snowflake motif. I'm knitting the smallest size, and I decided to hold the yarn doubled in order to get the gauge for the pattern. And I am knitting this in Holst Garn Coast, and yeah, it was nicely sent to me by Holst. So it's so far been really nice to knit with. I actually prefer it. I prefer knitting with it compared to the Super Soft by Holst, only because I also like knitting with the Super Soft, but the spinning oil in the Super Soft is a little bit off-putting for me, and I just need to wash the yarn first. I didn't wash the yarn first for this Coast yarn because it didn't have the same smell as the spinning oil does in the Super Soft, so it didn't bother me, and it's not quite as crunchy as well as the Super Soft is because of the spinning oil. Anyway, I'm getting close to the point of separating off the sleeves. You can see one of my increase lines here and the other one's here, and this is one of the sleeves. So I'm almost at the point. I think I need to count and measure. Soon I will be separating for the sleeves. So yeah, today in class I knit from about this yellow line up, which it's going pretty slowly right now just because I am at like really long rows because I'm knitting basically across the widest point of my body before separating off for the sleeves. But I think that, soon, I think I just have a couple more rows left of these really long rows, and then I'll be onto the body, which will be nice. Color work always looks a little bit crazy when it's not blocked, but it's so satisfying to block it and see what it looks like in the end. I'll show you the inside so you can get a feeling for what it looks like. So that is the Winter Storm pattern by Anne Meyer, and it's currently published in Norwegian and will be available in English pretty soon, I think. So that's pretty much what I have been working on this week. I finished my Crenate socks, except for I just remembered that I haven't done the second Kitchener stitch on the last toe, but they are pretty much finished. Anyway, so I have been browsing through Ravelry a lot this week, and one project that I really would like to knit soon is the Mira Pullover, which is a pattern by Justina Lokowski. Can't remember how you say her last name exactly, and I don't have it written out in front of me right now. Anyway, this is a really beautiful pullover that has a simple texture stitch on the front, and I really like one of the projects that I have seen on Ravelry, which you will be seeing it right now, hopefully. And I think this could be a nice sweater to knit. I like how it's a raglan shaping that has a little bit more of a scoop neck to it, and I think that it is a pullover that I could see myself wearing. Mira is what I have been dream knitting this week as well. I mean, I'm on Ravelry all the time, I think, looking at patterns, and sometimes I think I should just focus on what I have in front of me and spend the time that I have to knit on that instead of just browsing Ravelry, but that's also fun. I do have some yarn that I'm sort of looking for a project to do something with it. Not sure what it will be yet, but I have these unicorn tails that I purchased this summer when I was in London with my family. And I think it's rainwater or well something, button jar, and celadon. And then I have a little bit of leftover antler, which is just a white. And then this week, my friend here in Stockholm gave me her leftovers of Madeleine Tosh in Big Sur, which is this lovely color that goes really nicely with these three that I already have. And this is pretty much equal to one of these. And also Whiskey Barrel, which is a lovely brown. And again, I really love this brown, and I think it's because this brown has so many interesting colors in it. Like there's blue, and I don't know, maybe I need to give brown another chance, but I really like this color. Maybe because it's kind of a grayish brown, like this, but in a different way. But just brown, I'm not a fan of. But this is beautiful. So I'm thinking if there's something that I want to knit with these, sort of in this order, if you get the idea. But I haven't come across anything in particular yet. So let me know if you have any ideas. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what is upcoming. I did have one question that I thought I would answer from the group this week. So before a first-time project, would you recommend practicing on a flat piece of knitting? So I don't know if you mean maybe before knitting in the round, but I would suggest that actually knitting in the round is a really nice way to start a project because knitting in the round is a really nice way to start a project or start knitting for the first time because you can focus on knitting and you don't have to worry about learning the purl stitch so much. I don't have a problem with purls. I like knitting purls just as much as I like knitting knit stitches. But in the beginning, when you're just learning how to knit, perhaps if you just want to focus on one stitch, like knitting, then it might actually be easier to knit in the round because then you're just knitting only knit stitches, you're not having to purl. But if you mean should you first practice on a flat piece, like should you make a swatch, then yes, I would recommend that. Not only does your swatch give you information about how many stitches per inch you're getting, it gives you information about how the fabric will feel once it's finished and washed. It also allows you to try out different stitch patterns. So you can see in this swatch, I tried out 3 different types of stitches that I'm going to use in the sweater. So you get a feeling for how the yarn looks in each of the different patterns. You get a feeling for how it, stretches and behaves in each of the patterns, and you just get to practice knitting the actual stitches before you're on a garment, and then maybe you don't want to rip out 100 stitches or something to fix a mistake that you might not have made if you had got a chance to practice first. So I hope that answers your question. So the second question is, what was your first stranded knitting project? Do you have a favorite pattern style? For example, snowflakes, borders, geometrics. I was just trying to remember what my first project was, and actually I made a horrible yoked sweater out of acrylic yarn. It was the second sweater that I had ever knit. It was a pullover pattern by Drops, and I had no clue what I was doing. I knit it in, it was this huge ball of yarn that came from Joann Fabrics, and it had kind of, a yoke pattern around the edge, and the stitches were too far away from each other, and I didn't know that you had to make sure that the floats were loose in the back, so by the time I finished knitting the sweater, when I tried to pull it on, the yoke part was all up here because I couldn't get it over my shoulders. It was horrible. So I wouldn't recommend that as a first project. I would recommend knitting mittens for color work for the first project, especially in a little heavier weight yarn, maybe a sport or DK or even worsted weight yarn, to try it out and get the feeling for how it works. I don't think that I have necessarily a preference for color work in terms of what design, but I guess you could say that this was a little bit more geometric, perhaps, and that was a lot of fun. And right now I'm knitting on the Winter Storm, which is snowflakes, that I also like a lot. So I think I tend to go a little bit more with modern colorwork designs, but I also like traditional snowflakes and that kind of thing as well. 3. Is the technique of carrying colors to other rows better than cutting the yarn when there is a color change, or do you use both techniques in a project? So I think it really depends on the project. If you are changing colors with a wide space between the colors, so let's say you knit one row in purple and then you have 10 rows of gray before you have another row of purple, I would probably cut the yarn and weave it in rather than carrying it. But if you only have 3 rows in between colors, then I would probably carry it in the back. Just depends really on what it looks like. The thing with carrying the yarn is that carried yarn will always be less flexible than the knitted fabric, so it will create some tension if you try to pull it. If you try to stretch out the fabric, it will be restricted by that strand in the back. So if you have only a short distance, it doesn't maybe matter so much, but if you're carrying it over a long distance, it could matter. Also, it's not very nice to have long floats in the back because you can catch things like your fingers on them. So I prefer to just cut it and weave it in, and it's not so bad. Okay, and then her final question is, sometime in the future, would you demonstrate how you manage your yarns as you knit rows with 2 colors? I have watched some YouTube videos, but would love to see your technique. Do you hold a color in each hand? So, yes, I do hold the color in each hand, and I wasn't planning on doing this today, but I don't really have an ideal setup for doing tutorial filming because I don't have a tripod or anything that can hold my camera over my head to film my hands, but I guess while I have this colorwork sweater here, I can at least show you. It won't be from my view, but you can see that I have it in 2 hands. So let's just hopefully not have that clicking too loudly, but if I'm knitting with 2 colors, I'm just not actually doing the pattern now, but just knitting back and forth, 1 stitch of each color. That's how I do it. 1 color, and then the next. Oh, now I just split it, but you get the idea, perhaps. So I hope that helps. Thank you for your questions, Gloria, and if anyone else has any questions, feel free to leave them in the Ravelry group and I would be happy to answer them. Sometimes it takes me a little while to get to the questions, but I always read them and I'm happy to answer. I think that's about it for this week. I am hoping to finish my Herbarium sweater, so maybe I will be wearing that next week. We will have to see. But have a lovely rest of your week, and until next time, happy knitting! Bye!